The night she knocked on that stranger's door, everything changed. Not just for her, but for him too. Two broken souls about to discover that family isn't always given. Sometimes, it's fought for. The wind tore through the valley like it had a grudge. Snow came at them sideways, erasing everything. No path forward, no way back. Just endless white. Eliza Cooper pulled her thin shawl tighter, knowing it wouldn't help. It never did. Behind her, three small shapes moved through the storm. Nathan, 10 years old, trying so hard to be brave. Leah, barely 8, stumbling with every step. And little Ben, just 5, whimpering as he clung to his mother's dress, his tiny hands frozen stiff. Eliza's legs screamed with exhaustion. Her lips split open every time she whispered encouragement. She didn't know how much farther they could go. She wasn't sure if she could make it, but stopping wasn't an option. Not after what Matthew did, not after he rode away, leaving them with nothing but empty promises and half a bag of flour. His words still echoed in her head. "You'll figure it out, Eliza. You always do." The betrayal tasted bitter. He didn't leave for supplies. He left forever. So she pushed forward through the storm, through the pain, through the silence heavy with desperation. And then she saw it. A light flickering faintly through the trees. A cabin. Her knees almost gave out, but she forced herself to stay upright. "Come on," she whispered, her voice barely there. "Just a little more." They stumbled the final yards together and collapsed against the door. Eliza's frozen knuckles banged weakly. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. She knocked again, harder, trying to call out, but only a rasp escaped. Then the door opened. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, backlit by firelight. His face was all hard angles and a graying beard. But his eyes, they were what struck her. Cold, weary, used to being alone. For a moment nobody spoke, but words weren't necessary. Not when 3 frozen children were shaking violently, barely able to stand. The man's jaw tightened. He stepped aside. "Get in." Eliza didn't hesitate. She practically dragged the children inside, and the door slammed shut behind them, sealing out the howling wind. Warmth hit them like a wave, the crackle of a fire, the smell of pine and smoke. The man moved quickly, pulling chairs close to the hearth. "Sit. Get warm." Eliza obeyed, unwrapping scarves and peeling stiff coats from her children's tiny bodies. Nathan helped Leah while Ben buried himself in his mother's lap. The man disappeared briefly and returned with thick blankets and a kettle. "Drink," he said, pouring steaming water into chipped mugs. "Ain't much, but it's better than the cold." Eliza took the cup gratefully, stealing a glance at him. He moved like someone who'd made peace with solitude. Everything about him, from his heavy boots to the set of his shoulders, spoke of a man who didn't expect company, but he hadn't turned them away. "Thank you," Eliza managed, her voice raw. The man grunted, stirring the fire. "You come far?" he asked after a silence. Eliza hesitated. Something about his steady presence made her answer. 3 days, she whispered. "East of Bitter Hollow. Wagon broke. Walked the rest." The man didn't flinch. "Why?" The question hit harder than expected. She swallowed, glancing at her children, now huddled and half asleep. "Had to leave," she said finally. That seemed enough. He didn't pry. Instead, he nodded and leaned back. "Name's Jonas Hale," he offered. "Eliza Cooper," she replied softly. "Nathan, Leah, Ben." Jonas nodded again, his gaze softening just slightly as he watched Ben's small hand clutching his mother's skirt, even in sleep. "You're safe here," Jonas said quietly. "Storm's not going anywhere tonight. Neither are you." Relief hit Eliza so hard she almost broke, but she held it together like always. "Thank you," she whispered again. Jonas just turned back to the fire. Outside, the storm raged. But inside, for the first time in forever, they were safe, for now. Morning came slowly. The storm had softened, but not passed, hissing like something coiled and waiting. Eliza woke first, her back aching from sleeping upright. But her eyes went straight to the children. Nathan, Leah, and Ben were bundled in borrowed quilts, their cheeks pink with warmth instead of cold. They were safe. She found Jonas outside, splitting wood with practiced ease. Snow still fell lightly, dusting his shoulders. Eliza hesitated, then stepped out. "You don't have to do all that for us," she said softly. Jonas didn't look at her. "Not doing it for you," he replied. "Doing it for the stove. Stove doesn't care who's hungry." Eliza almost smiled. She knew his type. Men who hid kindness behind rough words. She stepped off the porch and began gathering the split wood. Jonas paused. "Could have stayed inside," he said. "I've been sitting too long," Eliza replied. "Feels better to move." He nodded once, a silent approval. They worked together in comfortable silence. By the time the wood was stacked, the sky had lightened to dull silver. Jonas gestured toward the door. "Coffee's probably still warm." Inside, the children stirred. Nathan yawned and stretched. Leah rubbed sleep from her eyes. Ben peeked out from under the quilt cautiously. Jonas poured coffee, black and bitter. Eli's. Zay wrapped her cold fingers around the cup gratefully. "You planning to move on when the storm breaks?" he asked. Eliza hesitated. "I don't know. Thought I had family out west, but letters stopped coming." Jonas nodded. "You're not the first to think West held all the answers," he said quietly. "Most times, you just find more questions." Eliza met his eyes. For a moment, something passed between them. Understanding. They were both ghosts in a way, left behind by the world. If this story touches your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. As the day wore on, the children settled in. Nathan helped Jonas with the animals, hauling hay and learning how to swing an axe properly. Leah stayed inside with Eliza, mending torn mittens and asking quiet questions about Jonas. Why did he live alone? Ben trailed Jonas everywhere, asking endless questions. "What's that knife for? Do bears come here?" Jonas, to his credit, answered every single one. By evening, something had shifted. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was comfortable. The children laughed softly by the fire. Eliza smiled as she stirred stew, glancing at Jonas, who sat whittling a small bird. "You carve well," she said quietly. Jonas glanced up. "Something to do when the wind won't stop." Eliza watched him. "I think you're kinder than you let on." Jonas didn't smile, but his lips twitched slightly. That felt like a victory. Night fell heavy. After supper, the children curled up near the hearth again. Eliza and Jonas sat at the table, lamplight casting soft shadows. "Thank you," she said suddenly. Jonas raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For not asking too many questions," she said. Jonas looked at the sleeping children. "Didn't seem like you needed more questions," he murmured. "Seemed like you needed rest." Something tight loosened in Eliza's chest. Silence settled again, but it was easy this time. Jonas stood. "Storm's breaking," he said. "Tomorrow you can head out if you want." Eliza nodded slowly, but the thought made her stomach twist. Head out. Back into a world that had left her battered. Or stay. But that was a thought for another night. For now, they were safe. For now, the fire burned steady. And for the first time in a long time, Eliza allowed herself to hope that maybe safety wasn't temporary after all. Morning broke with pale, uncertain light. The storm had passed. The sky was clear for the first time in days. Jonas stepped onto the porch, smelling change in the air. Inside, Eliza and the children were already up. Nathan rolled up quilts, eager to help. Leah braided her doll's hair while humming. Ben followed Jonas everywhere, asking about everything. It felt normal, too normal. Jonas knew better than to trust normal. By noon, Eliza stood in the doorway looking toward the distant ridge. "Do you think it's safe now?" Jonas set down his axe. "Safe isn't something the land gives," he said, "but it's quiet. That counts for something." They worked side by side. Jonas repaired a fence. Eliza swept the cabin. It felt settled, rooted. And that's when the sound came. Hoofbeats. Jonas heard them first. Steady, unhurried, confident. He stepped out, eyes narrowing. A rider emerged from the trees. Tall, lean, dressed too fine for these parts. Two more followed. The first man removed his hob, revealing slicked back hair and a smug smile. Jonas knew the type instantly. Not a drifter, something worse. A man who thought power was his birthright